I think that if we need to get the hoodies made, it would just be letters, right?
Well, I'm not even against the lettering and the coloring
I love
The
gold.
lettering.
on the black background.
Dude, I'm so down with gold. You guys have got to see it. Like, I like those rigs, but these rigs that I got the other day in from the Prince, high top white with gold laces.
Oh, laces? Nice.
I'm gonna wear them up soon. Hey, I want to introduce you guys to somebody. I got a special friend here today. His name's Kellen. All right, whoever's paying
We're all
attention to this
lost.
right now,
Yeah.
they're looking at me funny. This is how you know you've chosen your friends wrong. Hit the links if you know who Kal-El is. You have no clue who
Terrible
Kal-El
nickname.
is?
This is a Superman thing, right?
It's his name on his home
Oh,
planet.
okay. Yeah, I was.
It's weird, dude.
I don't think you pronounced it right.
I went
Kal-El.
way over. I
Look
went way
it up.
over.
Look it up. It's
I went way
Kal-El.
over.
K-E-L-E-L.
This
But it
better
is
be-
nice to have something that's not.
I didn't
black foam.
actually even see that.
So this
So that's
guy,
why I'm really confused.
This guy came to Tulsa when Arthur did a Comic-Con a couple years ago, and he's the one that signed those figurines downstairs. He's pretty awesome. If you guys remember, he's also then jumped into a couple like other superhero movies, some of the Marvel movies and whatnot. He plays a pretty good character. So Thad's terrified by the live. So he's just terrified by it.
It was echoing. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, we're good with the echo. So
Yeah, not a big deal.
let's jump into this. Let's kind of start out quick though. Dude, some of the recaps we've had in the last couple of weeks have been ridiculous. We've had some really good takes, whereas people are kind of sending in either reviews, we're getting personal texts, we're getting comments, and I think that we're getting exactly what I kind of planned on getting. People going, wow, that was not what I was expecting. I got one the other day from a friend you guys know. It's actually a female, wife of one of my good buddies, sends a text and says, hey, I want you to listen to this other. It was a link to a guy speaking about masculinity and how men can handle vulnerability without being, the big P word and all that kind of stuff. And what was cool about this person that sent it is she would be in a situation to where they wouldn't necessarily define and understand masculinity mixed with a spiritual manhood altogether. And she was like, hey, listen to this. I have this person in my chair, and I was talking about your all's last episode last week, and she wanted me to listen to this. So what my point to you guys is it's sparking conversation, which is what I think that we're interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we said we wanted to talk about were the things that our culture continues to keep kind of off limits, but we know there's freedom in those things. I mean, that's the hard truth. And Thad, when we jumped into masturbation and Bryan gave you a churchy name and all the nicknames, it's the fun stuff. But really, I talked to somebody else the other day about their marriage, and they brought some stuff up, and I said, well, what's your sex life like? And we dug in, and there was a lot of freedom later. There's so much freedom in these things that culture says we can't talk about. And culture's starting to make more and more things off limits or taboo or, worth canceling. And those are really the areas with some depth for people to find freedom. So I'm excited to see the responses you've had come back in.
Well, to your point, Kellen, that culture will take and make it off limits, or something that we also will deal with is they'll relabel it.
Yeah.
They'll take a topic and say, okay, people do care about this, and then their marketing machine or their internal promotion will take over and say, let's relabel this thing. Let's take it and put our world on it, and we can still disguise it in this way to where people are interested in jumping in, but then they start to poison. They start to poison men. I would think of examples around, well, let's talk about, if you were to talk about sex before marriage, right? This is actually, I think, as I'm running in my mind, sex before marriage is a thing. In past episodes, we've talked about, look, we always like to disclose, hey, we're not saying anyone's headed to hell because you had sex before marriage. What we're trying to do is have a winning game plan for what's better, and then share with you, hey, mistakes we've made. So we talked about soul ties the last couple of weeks, and I venture to say we're going to talk about soul ties till we die. But the world says, hey, of course you got to deal a little bit before you get married, right? You got to figure out, what's all these little sayings they say. You got to check out all this stuff before you actually get married. But what we would tell you is that's the world relabeling a very important topic, whereas we would say you're actually not going to learn anything. You don't need to, you need to wait on it, right? You're not going to learn anything you have to know right now.
Yeah, and it continues to devalue things, right? And so the whole saying was test drive, and that's the clicky circle.
There it is. There it is.
And guys will maybe say even something even, more surface level or just dumb, and that's where the toxic masculinity
I'm
comes
glad you
in.
went with test drive. I wouldn't have to edit you out again.
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys know we're going to edit Kellen out like once a time, but
for using real words
wow.
that YouTube doesn't like. It's
YouTube
okay.
hates them, and if it's anything valuable, they hate it.
So, but when you talk about what's actually valuable, again, just like saying, hey, it's just sex, it's not any deeper than the surface. Well, no, when you're a 40-year-old man, and you've had intimacy with more than one person, it is stuff. There's some lingering stuff. So that's always been the lie. To say, hey, you got to test drive it. Are they any good in bed? Well, what if it's developed? And what if there's something deeper than just the physical activity, right? So these marketing schemes or plans in every area of life for men and women, they sound good. And that's the hard thing is once you get to the bottom of them, you realize that this has really been thought through. It's very methodical. It sounds great. Everybody should kind of like it, but then it strips the real value away from things, and it's all self-serving. So whoever started that brand of whatever they started to get attention is still self-serving, but they're really screwing up the topic they're talking about. And what we're trying to do is get some topics and get to the truth.
Well, and we could, we're going to do this every once in a while just because we want to identify with people, and we also want the subject to be relatable. This is another subject that if we needed to, we could pull faith out of it for a minute and say, this is still not a great idea.
No.
Man, pull the faith out of sex before marriage. I can tell you as a guilty person on not waiting, and again, no judgment to anyone. I've had a lot of good people in my life. Even the people that you had engaged in those relationships on, even for instance, Legacy, things happen, but he's no mistake. He's a miracle. Everyone involved is great people, but you can always sit there and go, we probably could have done this a little bit better, right? And so that's why we like to take these situations and apply them back and say, hey, we're willing to talk about the real thing so that maybe the younger generation or someone else in a similar situation where they're getting tested can avoid a harder road, And so I try to tell people all the time is, I'm not really trying to discuss a spiritual topic with you right now. I'm trying to tell you that if you wait until you're married in a married situation to have sex, you're going to save yourself some trouble. Wait, do it that other way.
Well, you're also not going to have expectations that they might not be able to meet as well.
Which
your
the
partner.
world,
And that's something that's like, hey man, like if this is all I've ever experienced, it's the best I've ever experienced.
right? God
You know what I mean?
God created sex. He created intimacy with a partner. But you're talking about another thing the world has relabeled when you say that, Thad. They've taken what God considers to be nice, good, beautiful, the whole Eve thing. I'm sure Kellen will touch on in a minute. I've heard you talk about Adam and Eve in that way. You may never remember it, but I think it's going to come up in your mind. You've discussed it. But what the world has done and said, hey, well, God made this female thing, and then the world's over-sexualized it, right? They've made it this thing to where it can't just be pure and beautiful. It's got to be this like sexy, erotic, crazy.
It's got to be
thing.
like animals.
It's got to be nuts.
It's got to be crazy.
Well, the flip side, the elephant in the room there is the church has made it like, sex. And so you get two people. And so that I've seen this a lot in the church. Like we have to talk about the flip side. So depending on who's listening, like you just can't be comfortable with maybe your husband or your wife because it's always been so yucky. And that's not what sex is. So again, we're driving for what is the truth. And you brought up Eve. And so God creates man in his own image, 3 in 1. Not what you physically look like, but a 3 in 1 being. Said it's not good for man to be alone. In that moment, he had the presence of God. He had all the rest of creation, but not another human. So he pulls from man, woman. And woman carries characteristics with God that men are stripped from. And if you have a family and look at the way a man and a woman care for kids, you can see it quick what's just natural for you, the way women even carry the kid. But he said, come together and multiply. And so he created it specifically to create life. It's the way, like really think about it. It's just sex. No, no, no. This is the way a good God created man and woman to create and grow life. And the world's watered it down to an attribute of something I look at on another person. Like most of the people that are caught up in this sex culture are talking about body parts. They're dwindling people's value and their identity down to a body part. It's really jacked up if you think through it.
Well, and it's not like we're taking apart some situation where there aren't consequences and repercussions. What we're trying to tell people is, hey, we're not just trying to take nice things from you. We're not just trying to be party poopers and take all the fun. We're trying to say, hey, that thing right there was designed to be used differently than what the world's telling you. And when you use it out of line and out of order, because God is a God of order, it's very clear in the Word about different things. When you use it out of order, there's likely going to be some repercussions and consequences. And we're just trying to say, hey, if you do this a different way, if you do this the way it was designed, you don't have to have consequences and repercussions like that. But on the flip side of that, Kellen, which is what your organization is about, is, hey, if this happens, we're there. Yeah. We're going to come behind you. We're going to be a backboard. We're going to be there for you to bounce off of and then be involved into something. You're not going to get lost. You're not going to be forgotten about. Hey, the mistake's made. Let's redeem it. There is a process for redemption and reconciliation. So let's shift gears a little bit. Not a ton. I had gotten another quote, a comment, review, something the other day, and someone was talking about you guys putting all this work into it. You've got all the equipment. You're spending all this time on it. Who are you guys doing this for? And they said, what if nobody listens? This was kind of this conversation that was ongoing. And I said, well, I think that the people on this team would do this even if there was only one person listening to it or watching it.
Yeah.
And we started some dialogue around that.
Yeah, we did. You know, when you look at the mission for anything and you talk about what the goal is here, right, is you're bringing truth, but why? Yeah. Because we've seen the world in its version of truth tear people down, isolate people. We've got suicide rates right now in every area that are higher than they've ever been. We've got a society that's so anxious and so fearful and so overrun by busyness they can't operate. We've got kids growing up that don't know how to communicate. And so if we can take one of these topics, and like think back in the day, one of my favorite things to say was like, you know how frustrating it is for a dad of two surrounded by a bunch of great men to realize at one point in time, you know, we had like little tents or houses and there was these older guys over here, right? You're going to screw life up. You were talking about like, hey, you have this epic mess up and let's just call it what it is. Let's draw that visual out. I find an attractive girl. We go out, have a couple drinks. We end up connecting for months, having a lot of sex. And then now she's pregnant. And really the things that go untalked about is oftentimes the girl's scared. Is it the right guy? We haven't really talked through that. The guy, what's his framework look like? Like with you, right? I just know you well. Like what men don't have the opportunity to say, and I've had guys circle up with me and say it, it's not just that she's pregnant. It's that I've always questioned, can I even be a good dad because I never had a dad? Right. And I think I'm going to fail. And those are the conversations that are worth digging through and having.
I think so many people get in a scenario just like you said, and then they start to question their own identity based upon guilt and shame, which we talked about last week. Guilt and shame is not from the Heavenly Father. Guilt and shame is from the enemy. And what we're trying to help people understand is, hey, there's two things happening here, guys. One, if we can help someone not get into a scenario, great. That's what we're doing this for. If we can be available to help steer someone into redemption, reconciliation stories, that's what we're doing this for. Ultimately, we want people to understand everyone fits somewhere. And just because you may have been a part of this mistake, or maybe you know someone, we want to reframe that. We're using the word mistake just so that we can relate, I think what we would like to call this thing is an opportunity for redemption, because nothing can really go unredeemed if you submit it to the Father.
No, I've got a guy that just got out of prison. Went back to
We
prison.
weren't going to tell people about that, but if you want to go ahead and
and actually got back on drugs before he went to prison for a second time. Had his whole life together, kids back, thriving job, gets a taste of drugs, ends up with the Irish mafia like a week later. So he's in prison for quite a while. Now he's back out, and man, with $50 in your pocket, right, out of prison, having to go back and look at your two girls in the face that you haven't seen in over 5 years. So visually, I mean, what do they look like? What are they going to think of me? What's that uphill? Like, that's the scenarios the world can throw at you with a mistake, right?
yeah,
And so what does that look like? Well, this guy came and got plugged in with a group of men, right? And I would say if you have breath in your lungs, you're not done. And the first thing that he did, we talked about this with the shame cycle last week, was talked about it. He invited guys in that championed him and listened. They actively listened to what he was going through and said, man, what do you need? And they encouraged him on the next healthy step and the next healthy step and the next healthy step. Dude, 2 weeks ago, this guy texted me and said, hey, I get to see my kids again. I've been so consistent. Mom's going to let me see the kids. And so I had dinner with him and his two daughters, just as a very safe place. And then he actually took them this last week to serve with him out in the community. He's got 3 job offers. I mean, but 6 months ago, if he's on his own, he's drowning and probably suicidal, right? So that's some of the freedom in getting this stuff in the open and understanding if it's you and you're in any season, and a lot of guys through job loss or thinking about taking the only job opportunity you have is like $12 an hour, but you used to make 60 or 80 grand. I mean, I dealt with that with guys a lot too. They don't even want to take the job because it's decreasing their value and they're questioning themselves, right? It's so important to not isolate and to sit down with somebody and get it out and talk about it and then take the next healthy step.
The thing that keeps coming up in my mind here is just when we do isolate, we just go back to the shallow end. We go back to where it's easy, where it's safe, where we can just do it by ourselves. But like God calls us to go to the deep end and like go do the hard stuff and like go grow, because the deep end is where you're going to grow in a pool sense. Like my kid doesn't know how to swim, but like I'm not tossing him in the deep end on the first day, like, because he'd be like, what are we doing here? But like eventually he's going to go to the deep end, and like that's where he's going to grow as a swimmer. That's where we grow as men too, is the deep end. And you need people to take you to the deep end when you don't know how to take yourself there.
That can be suffocating too, is, you know, especially if we're in an unhealthy season. I've been in unhealthy seasons. You've been in unhealthy seasons. Thad, you've been in some hard, I mean, you just had kids, so we can question a lot of things when the first kids roll in, right? But in an unhealthy season, to look around, unfortunately, your frame is always, they're doing great, right? Or you see success in other people, and what you're doing is you're looking at them on their journey way out here and thinking you need to be there, when in reality, you just need to speak it and take the first healthy step. It's not about getting all the way to the deep end. It's about taking the first step with somebody.
Right.
Well, I read, and I shared this verse with you guys earlier today. I won't read the whole thing, but we'll link it up as in our notes, is Luke 14:7 through 11. But if you get right down here into the verse a little bit, it's kind of talking about an analogy of coming into a dinner and where you're going to sit. And this thing's, give this person your seat. Right there, if you just pull that out, give this person your seat. What it's trying to get to is, you walk into a dinner, and are you just going to jump at the head of the table, even if you're just a random guest? Or are you going to sit at what's open to leave that seat open for somebody else? What the word's trying to tell us here is the Lord recognizes humility, and if you're going to just take your place at a lower part of the totem pole, it leaves a seat open for someone else. But what can also happen here is that the Lord promotes you. But I want to just dig into this part right here. Give this person your seat. While this verse is trying to talk about humility and taking yourself to the lower part of the totem pole, I want to focus in on the fact that we're leaving a seat open for anyone. Mm-hmm. We don't know who that seat is for.
It's always a seat at the table.
Right. One side of this says, hey, sit at the end. Don't promote yourself, let God promote you. But the other end of this is we're leaving a seat open for whoever it is we can get to sit there. And going to this part where we're talking about we would do this if just one person was listening, I think that we're all pretty interested in really doing this with the assumption that maybe one person might be listening to this. Our goal was never to be like, I hope a jillion people listen to this. Of course, we want as many people to hear it as we can. But I think we've had conversation in the past saying, if it's one, because, dude, when we sit around a cigar table, when we sit around in conversations, it's never like a humongous group. I would say that a lot of those opportunities are focused in a one-person direction, whether it's one of us or one of the guests.
Yeah, and I think the thing that opens up that's beautiful there is there's a person, and oftentimes it's masked. We talked about that too, but with a hidden need. And when it comes to the table, right, because we had the open seat, man, because we've all walked together and gotten some health in our walk, but we know we have each other, everybody's ready to respond.
Right.
You mentioned that verse, keeping the open seat at the table, and also the importance there too is humbling yourself. You know, we look at how Jesus modeled this. He taught that the Father cares, right? And he cares. So even if you've got 100 sheep and 99 are there, you go out to find the lost. Well,
you shared that today from Luke 15.
But what is leaving? Like think about this. So if I've got my staff, I've got the sheep all in one place, I've got my eye on them. Outside that fencing is where all the sheep would go out and there'd be a predator after them, right? So I'm going into the wild after that sheep as well. I also care enough to notice that they're gone and pursue them. Then you look at the frame of Jesus as he walked. So that's what he taught, but then he's walking and he's teaching, he's becoming popular. He's in a crowd so packed. The disciples literally, he says, who touched me? And they almost make a joke out of it.
Right.
There's a million people around you, Jesus, and everybody wants your attention. And they're bumping into you. What do you mean? Like, no, power left me. And there's a woman that's desperate, that's been bleeding for over a decade. I think it was 12 years. And she touched the fringe of his garment, and he stops for her. And not only did he stop, he was on his way to somebody that was dying. A little girl that was dying. And so, yeah, he's on the way. Yeah. And he stops and he's fully present with that person. You go to Zacchaeus, and so he's a tax collector. And to frame this for everybody, when it talks about Jesus, Roman soldiers have taken over. They're taking advantage of people's wives. They're taking advantage of them. And this tax collector that's one of the Jews, right, is coming in and taking extra money from them and giving it over to these Roman soldiers. He's hated. And so Zacchaeus calls out the name of Jesus, and Jesus says, hey, we're going to have dinner, probably for hours, right? Then you've got one of the tax collectors, too, that's humbled himself and crying out to God, and you've got a religious, pompous, got canceled again, jerk that's saying, hey, at least I'm not that guy, right? That's not searching within at all. And God calls his attention to this person. Doesn't matter how broken you are. He said, just open up to me, right? You're so much more than and what he's trying to show humanity, I love you. I'm there, I've pursued you, and you are so much more than what you're saying and the things that you've done.
Well, for the men, people listening to this, we say men a lot too. Look, this is for everybody, but sometimes we're going to steer into the men just because
we're men.
We're men. But trust me, we've gotten so much good feedback from females. Very, very introspective comments from females because they're like, I know someone that needs to hear this. I need to hear this so I know how to relate to whoever. But practicality is this. I'll tell you guys, not long ago, I met a couple of friends at a place I hadn't been to before. Really small place. It's just a couple of guys. We're going to talk and play shuffleboard for a few minutes. No big deal. But it's time to go. I'm going to head out. And this is the way the story really went. I'm walking out, and I see to my right a couple people, and I can tell these guys, they're just different, just socially different. You could feel it. They're hanging out probably because they're in an age group to where people have shunned them a little bit, and they don't have anything real going on except for between them. And I just look at them, and I keep going. I get to the door, and I think, okay, you've been talking a lot about lately how you're a rookie, but you're just going to share the Lord with whoever. And I've been pretty good at this, but sometimes I get in this lackadaisical place where I'm like, okay, I just suck at this. I'm not going to do it. It's late. And I'm like, no. This is an opportunity. Just walk up and hit them with it. And guys, I'm telling you, this is the practicality I'm talking about for men. If you're listening and you're in the same season as some of us are, is sharing is the key. I turn around, I walk back over there. The people I'm with are looking at me like, I thought you were leaving. And I just asked these guys, hey, how's it going? They're saying it's good. And I said, hey, this is going to sound crazy to you, but I want to ask you something. You ever heard of Jesus? And, dude, two things can happen. One, not interested, get out of here. Cool, I get to leave just like I was planning to do. Or number two, any other answer. Any other answer. Any other answer. And I got one of those, and they said, two of the guys said yes. One of the guys just kind of looked at me. He had no answer. But to shorten this up, what ends up happening is I'm able to offer a couple of resources to 3 men that you can tell are lost in life. Not just in a spiritual sense. You could tell these guys didn't have a bunch of friends around them. They definitely didn't have strong support systems, and they were struggling in a lot of areas socially. So I'm able to hand a card that has my number and links to get to me on, and I tell them and I promise them, if you reach out to me, you will get opportunities to be blended in, meet people, make friends, get into accountability, and ultimately to find out why I just asked you if you know who Jesus is. Guys, I'm telling you how easy it was, is you don't have to be like an all-star at this deal. If we truly believe that God controls and created everything, he can make anything out of your rookie attempt.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the point, is it's not about you, but that's a great example, Bryan, of you leaving a seat at the table. Jesus' disciples, I mean, if you really look at the disciples, 2 of them should have had a fist fight within the first 5 minutes from where they came from, but they were a mess, and that they were chosen for a seat at the table to walk with Jesus, and he opened it up to everybody. And what I found, like when you talk to those people, you brought a couple to the cigar nights, like really we expect nothing in return, but what a lot of these people are giving us is life-changing. Right. Like those are some of the best moments. I'll tell you, with our time, I was doing some drops for some accountants. So they have deadlines. They work like 20 hours a day. Some of them at the end. It's crazy. Never thought you'd go to accounting and be like, yeah, I'm going to work 20-hour days.
Especially
during
March
tax
and
season.
April.
Yeah.
During tax season, they definitely do.
And this is how good God is. I'm on the south side of town, and so I just look up like places for caffeine. I look up, I'm not far from here, or places for chocolate, because I'm going to do some drops on their tax day.
Quick trip.
Some sweets, but like some decent things that I'm intentional when I buy that, and they're all closed. It was super weird. Like all the bakeries, different things are closed. So I go to a Reese's all the way across the parking lot, see a guy with long hair, and I just kind of notice it. Long braided hair way across the parking lot. I go to check out, and that same person's sitting in a metal chair with his head down, just feels off. And I go to walk off because I'm on a time crunch here, right? I also have stuff in the car, and it's kind of hot, and so I don't want that to melt. And so I've just got a couple extra things. And I get to the door, and I hear, give me your sunglasses. Like the craziest clarity. And I've got a pair of sunglasses, and it's not really about the glasses, but they were my favorite pair. I don't care if they're $1 or $1,000.
Were you being robbed?
Huh? No.
Oh.
Maybe by God. No.
Oh, okay.
No.
It sounds like a robbery story.
No, I'm
dude.
standing in the doors, good for clarity, and literally here, give him your sunglasses. And so
you heard from God.
Yeah.
Dude, I thought he was hearing from the hair dude.
Yeah.
Like, give me your sunglasses, dude.
This is a whole nother seat at the table at that point.
Okay. I'm on you now.
But I'm standing there in the middle, and that's, again, it's how do we choose to respond? Not just to hear that, but any situation, because I'm standing with bags of groceries in the middle of like 10 people going around me, and I start having an out loud conversation seeking clarity. I walk back over to this guy, and I'm like, hey, I introduce myself. He introduced himself. I'm like, you okay? He goes, no. It's like, I thought so. It's like, can I pray for you? He said, absolutely. And I said, I'm Kellen. We clarified, a couple things, and then he's like, man, I hate my job. This person starts, and it's a very tough guy. Had some tats on the back of his neck that probably didn't come from a local tattoo place. Right. He'd lived a life, great kid, but broke down. And I was able to minister to him just through being obedient. And like I said, it was leaving a seat at the table. It's not like I've got all this stuff to do and I have no time. It was responding and being obedient, because what that person was going through is so much more important to the Father than my meeting.
For the one, for that
For
one.
that one, yeah.
I'll tell you these. I'm having the same conversation with a guy the other day, and I'm sharing my like vulnerable, like, I think I suck at it. I'm kind of a rookie. I don't think I'm good at it. But then I got to thinking, guys, because this guy repeats to me is like the same thing. He goes, I'm just not really good at it. And here's the key. And dude, I've really messed up this week. And I'm thinking about what he said. Yeah, me too. I've been reactive this week to people who are stressing me out or unreasonable. I've said things I shouldn't. I've thought things I shouldn't 100%. I've, not the big stuff, boys, because as we change, we set up boundaries and we get a little better. So I'm not trying to, confess to you guys that I hit the strip club or nothing like that. Although people are challenged with that, certain addictions, but these sins are the same. I have been incredibly overreactive in the last 2 weeks due to stress. I've said some things I shouldn't. But as I'm sitting here thinking about it, yeah, I suck at this too. I've made a ton of mistakes in the last couple of weeks too. But guess what? Every platform in the world is filled with the very same thing every Sunday, and there's still a job to do. God says in the Word that we come before Him because we're not perfect. We're confessing to Him directly. He's forgiving us of our sins because Jesus died on the cross. That means no matter if you still messed up a few minutes ago, you're still part of the team. Your job is still the one. Your job is still to turn around, walk back towards the shuffleboard, and ask someone if they know who Jesus is. Your job is to remove your sunglasses or whatever it is that God's asking you to do and hand it to somebody and ask them where their heart is. Do they know who Jesus is? These opportunities are every single day. And you know who tells us that we're not good enough and don't do it because you sinned yesterday? The enemy. Right? He doesn't want you to do it. And all he's got to do is say, you can't do that, Kellen.
Yeah,
you were thinking about blah, blah, blah earlier.
He'll double down on your self-doubt really quick. But one thing that I hear often, because we transitioned into, well, if you're going after the one, right? If you want to make a seat at the table, what does that look like? And I've got a ton of guys, and like, you wouldn't believe this, man. I'm going through this, and I'm so confused because God just keeps using me. And yeah, God's going to show up. That's what you have to know is if you're suffering right now, if you got breath in your lungs, you're incredibly valuable. God loves you. You're a son or daughter. Like, He loves you. And it's not about, these actions are so minute that you're telling yourself, but if you're making room for the one, it doesn't matter what you're going through. You stopping and caring is all that other person needs.
Tell us that.
So here's what I've been thinking a lot. I've just been reading Luke 14 and 15 for the last 10 minutes or so. But the verses after what you had just shared is about this great feast. And it's about they went and invited people, and people were too busy for them. People were too busy to do it, to come. And the master was like, go get anybody then.
Yeah.
Go get anybody. We don't care. We don't care if they're blind. We don't care if they're poor, crippled, lame. Go get them. There's still room for more. There's still room. And it's like, man, we can't just like keep building the wall. We just got to build a longer table.
Think about
and
this.
Just pull up chairs. Like, they don't care if they're sitting in folding chairs or a throne.
Yeah.
Like, pull the chairs up.
Help me with this. In the Word, how many stories does it talk about Jesus addressing a huge crowd? I think of one, the fish and the loaves.
Two fish and there's two different loaves, yeah.
But that's really the only Bible story I can think of where it promotes Jesus addressing and preaching to some huge crowd.
Yeah, He taught in some of the local, what you call maybe synagogues, Thad,
Yeah,
but addressing mass crowds is there's two.
1 to 2, right?
Down.
Now let's think about how many times,
Maybe 3 or 4. But yeah.
well, how many times now can we come up with just right here that Jesus addressed one? He went to the house where they were having a service. They lowered him down. Mm-hmm. The lady grabbed his robe and became healed. The man at the gate that was blind, the gate called Beautiful, right?
The crippled one. I was waiting to go to the water.
Prodigal son. Yeah. There's a story about one. Job's about one. Jonah and the well is about his one story. What I'm trying to put together here is I believe that the Father is trying to tell us one is enough. He goes out, the story we already discussed about the sheep. There's story after story after story in the Bible that addresses the one. I think that what God's trying to tell us is that one conversation for that one person, no matter who that is just as important as if you're about to stand in front of 10,000 people. Not that one or the other is bad. I'm just trying to say is sometimes people get kind of weird, especially in our culture, and they're like, we're not going to set this thing up for one person. You guys have heard that, right? I don't want to do this event for one person. Or I think what we're trying to say is the opposite of that. Yeah, we'll set the whole freaking thing up if we get one. Because we know that one is going to be under God's divine power, which can turn into anything.
Yeah, I mean, Billy Graham, I think it was Billy Graham, was it? One of the great evangelists that was really clear and bold for the gospel was just on a trip and put his knees in the place where one of one of our all-time greatest theologians and prayer warriors would kneel and pray and ask for that same anointing. Like there's just, you don't know, in saying that, right? Billy Graham did a lot. I'd argue our buddy Rubens does a lot, right? When you're spending time one-on-one, there's some deep work happening there. There's a lot of freedom that can happen there. That doesn't happen when you're up front with a mic just giving a sermon. And I would argue throughout Scripture, God says it's the present time and the deep time that you spend with people is much more important than just being the guy out front with thousands of people watching. Because if you go to Jesus as well and watch him walk, there's also a time with a crowd that follows him around where he senses that they're only following out of selfish want for food, and it's not going to help them. And so he starts going a lot deeper and makes them choose. He talks about communion, but he talks about it in a sense of the body and the blood, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, let's, man, today's been a good one. Let's tie this one down. I've got to get on a phone call. And I just kind of want to remind everyone, hey, this is going to be the conversation every time. We're going to be talking about what's real. We'd love for you guys to go to wherever you get your podcasts. We share the links on our Facebook page. You get canceled, go there. You can find links to all the old posts, iHeart, iTunes, Spotify. When you go to that, we need you to leave us a review.
Even if you
leave
don't
us
like
a review there, share it, and man, we can't wait to keep doing this. We can't wait to have another conversation. We have questions. We'll take a question.
We did it live.
Yeah, we'll do the question. I really do have this call, but let's do that.
I have no call.
I'm here.
What other topics do you want to cover?
What topics do you want?
Yeah,
what topics do you want us to
Mike,
cover?
leave some comments
We'd
there.
love to cover what you want to hear about.
We've kind of been talking the last few weeks is, most things aren't going to be off limits. What you'll find with us is that you're going to find through vulnerability that we're going to share if we've made that mistake, how we've dealt with it, or if we haven't, what the word says about it, or what resource that we can provide says about it. So put some comments back in there and tell us what you want to hear about. So
yeah, I think we've kicked the can. I mean, just talking through it about, how do you talk to kids about sex? What's that look like? Married,
that'll be
sex
an
in general,
conversation.
having conversations of marriage. We had a good weekend over that, right?
Oof,
But really just looking to dig into a lot of topics in the future that people don't want to have.
yeah.
And I think about the one, just my last thought here is, Bryan, whenever we go to like a great restaurant and you've never heard about it before, and you're like, that was incredible food, we got to tell everybody. Like, we have tasted and seen that the Lord is good. Why aren't we telling everybody?
Yeah, that's the point.
And like, why aren't we like, this is so awesome, like this is so good. We got to tell you about it. So
Yeah, don't forget to review us. Don't forget to get canceled.
Don't forget to get on your call.
Don't forget to get on your call.
get canceled.